Saturday night, of course, the coronation of King Charles, where members of the public, including those of us in the realms and territories, will be able to swear allegiance to one of two people. Buckingham Palace hopes that you respond in favour of King Charles.
I swear that I will pay true allegiance to your majesty
and to your heirs and successors,
according to the law.
So help me God.
But Piers Morgan is okay if you swear it to him. The legend of Piers Morgan Uncensored joins us now from London. Are you okay if Republicans in this country choose to swear allegiance to you, sir?
Absolutely, Paul, and great to be on your show. Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, sorry about the earpiece burning out of your ear, but it reminded me of your show a couple of weeks ago when those idiots about the snooker protest were screaming at each other. It's just fun to sit back and enjoy. So give us an idea of what it's like a couple of days out, because we know how mixed the feelings were after the passing of the Queen. This is all about Charles. Do you think they'll take to the streets for him out of curiosity? What's your early sense?
Well, I think, like all these things, it'll be a bit of a slow burner. And as the week goes on, the media, of course, will go into saturation coverage, and that tends to ignite the public interest. Just in terms of scale, to put it in context, this procession that we're going to be seeing, the military procession around the King and Queen, is going to be twice as big as the one for the Queen's funeral and 3 times as big as the one for the Platinum Jubilee celebration. So this is going to be the biggest thing that this country has ever seen in terms of pomp and pageantry and procession since the Queen's coronation back in the 50s. So it's going to be a huge, huge spectacle, if nothing else.
Do you get a sense that because, I mean, obviously we only have one other example of one being televised, this is very different, all the lead up very different, 1 million people talking about it in forums such as this all the way around the world are very different, that it's impossible for this event to have the same punch that it did when it was Queen Elizabeth, or does all the extra noise add to it?
Look, I don't think you can follow Queen Elizabeth II. She was, in my estimation, the greatest monarch we've ever had. She was the longest reigning monarch we've ever had, and a quite unique and remarkable woman. And of course, she was able to accede to the throne through very unfortunate circumstances of the death of her father when she was just 26 years old. Massive difference to be a young, beautiful woman acceding to a throne with no social media or anything, just the world's mainstream media. Television just come in, of course, newspapers, and they shone this light on this dazzling woman around the world. Very different for Charles. He's heading towards 80. He's been the longest bridesmaid ever, and he now gets to be the king, the bridesmaid, if you like. And it's going to be a hard thing for him, I think, to try and emulate the enduring and extraordinary global popularity of his mother. But the bigger challenge for him, and you'll be very familiar with this, Paul, is what happens in many countries like Australia, where there is a bubbling sentiment of republicanism. Can Charles hold that at bay in the way that his mother did, or are we going to start to see a number of referendums around the world where people who pled allegiance to the Queen may not want to be quite so keen to profess it to him? So that's the bigger challenge, really, for King Charles. Yes, Saturday will be a huge event, but actually the future of the monarchy is really the more serious issue at stake here. Yeah, well, as you know, I mean, in Australia, about the second year of the second term of our new lefty government, their expectation is that they will bring it on as soon as that, so we could be within about 4 years away from it. But I've got to say, I did feel a little bit of a wobble through my bogan bones when I saw today about this Pledge of Allegiance. Now, I'm interested, I'm going to sit there, I want my kids to watch it, I understand the history of it. I joked before, but how do you feel about that? That the members of the public in the 21st century are supposed to chant back towards the king? I don't feel great about it. I've got to be honest. I think it's a bit of a misstep here. It's come from the Archbishop of Canterbury, I think, in conversations with the King and Queen. But I feel uneasy about this, mainly not for the first bit. I don't mind professing allegiance to a new king who's been at the side of his mother for, 60 years or so. I do have a problem with the rest of that sentence in the oath, that we have to profess sort of undying allegiance to heirs and successors. Now, let's think about that for a moment. Should a series of tragedies befall the top tier of the royal family, and God forbid that would ever happen, but say it did, we would actually end up potentially with King Andrew, Prince Andrew, or King Harry and Queen Meghan. Now, I'm sorry, I am not professing any allegiance to that lot. So I think they've made a bit of a misstep here in the way they phrased this. I also would have liked it if the king had professed his allegiance to the British people, perhaps,
Yes.
rather than this way round. That, I think, would have been the way for a modern progressive monarchy to go, which is, look, we get it. Obviously, we understand the feelings about all this are contentious. I profess my allegiance to you, the people. Better than people sitting there going, wait a minute, have I got to potentially swear lifelong allegiance to Prince Andrew?
Now, that Harry and Meghan of it all, obviously the in there, out there, he's going to be there, but not really. He'll be there in physical form, but his heart will be somewhere else because he's there for the best part of a couple of hours. Do you think they'll boo him? Do you think they'll move him through a side door? How do you think that the people will react should they get a glimpse of him?
I think you'll get a few boos, you'll get a few cheers as normal. Young people have more sympathy and empathy for Harry and Meghan than anyone over about the age of 30. My question for him is, what are you doing there? You spent the last 3 years trashing the royal family, all of them, naming them in your book and trashing them, embarrassing them. You've trashed the monarchy as an institution. You've called it being run effectively by a bunch of callous racists. Why are you there at the coronation of your father, who you've exposed to such ridicule and humiliation in Netflix series, in podcasts, in books? What are you doing rocking up now to the biggest royal event of your lifetime? And we know the answer. He'll have been directed, I suspect, by his wife. You've got to get back into the main game here, because that's where our money is. If we're not seen around the main royals at these big events, then very quickly our currency, the way we make money, disappears. And I hate to be cynical about it, but I think that's the only reason he's there. And if I was a member of the royal family, I wouldn't trust him as far as I could throw him, frankly. And I suspect it will be a very icy reception when he gets there. And from what I hear, almost nobody in the royal family right now is talking to him.
Yeah.
So, I ask one question. What are you doing there, having caused the damage you've caused?
And then, of course, the games from Meghan, where her royal appearance will be at the Met Gala, where she, of course, will be there with AOC, tax the rich and all those other activists. So she will have her princess moment. It'll just be in New York.
Yeah, I don't know if she's confirmed she's going, but it wouldn't surprise me. Obviously, she's now, as far as she's concerned, a global celebrity. She's only famous because she married into the British royal family, and she, like her husband, has torched that family ever since, and torched her own family, of course. Her father, Thomas, came out with a pretty heart-rending interview at the weekend in which he believes in her head she's basically killed him off. Harry says as much in his book Spare, or Spare Me as I renamed it. He talks about effectively she was grieving the loss of her father. Well, he's still there. He's still alive. He lives 70 miles away from them on the Mexican border next to Montecito. He's a 1-hour cab ride. Harry's never met him, never met the man whose daughter he married. And Thomas Markle, remember, was a guy who brought up Meghan on his own for a large number of years in her formative youth. And yet she's tossed him on the bonfire like she has so many other people in her life. It's all pretty unedifying. And the fact that the two of them still parade around as the king and queen of compassion, forget it.
So good to talk to you, great man. But before I let you go, can we just talk about the passing of Jerry Springer? I know that he was on multiple versions of your broadcasting career, from long sit-down interviews to, of course, most recently at Talk TV. I think it's The Ringer, which, as you know, is the pop culture site in the United States. They referred to the Jerry Springer show as being in the Sick Day Hall of Fame. He was appropriate for his time in the 90s, but he was sharp all the way to the end. What do you think of the passing of this TV great?
He was an unbelievably good guy, Jerry. He was the host of America's Got Talent for a couple of years when I was a judge on it, and we lived at the same hotel in LA, and we used to just hang out a lot. We used to sit by the pool together and chat about world politics. We'd have dinner 2 or 3 times a week. So I became a very good friend of Jerry's, and he was really an incredibly down-to-earth guy who used to openly admit, look, I know the show's terrible, but it's also unbelievably popular, and it made him staggeringly wealthy. But also, he said he would always defend the people that came on. He said they're always there because they want to be on it, And there's a real lot of snobbery about television where unless you're, been to the right school and have the right accent, you're not supposed to be on television. He took a view these are real people, working class people who wanted to come and air their problems on his show. And why shouldn't they get a platform? And I used to have some sympathy with that. But, an amazing moment happened, Paul, with Jerry Springer and me. When I first met him, we went out for dinner in LA. And I said, we're talking about his show, and I said, who watches your show? And he went, you know who watches it? Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
And I laughed. I went, I was serious. And he went, no, Muhammad Ali watches my show all the time. I went, are you serious? And I didn't really believe him. And we carried on the meal. We walked back to the hotel. And I swear to you, as I'm sitting here now, a large limousine pulled up as we were walking through the valet parking, and out stepped Muhammad Ali and his wife.
Wow.
Who I'd never met Muhammad Ali. I mean, talk about coincidence. And as they got out, his wife said, Muhammad, it's Jerry Springer. Jerry, he's still watching the show. And I then got to meet the greatest. It was an amazing moment. And Jerry and he were obviously pretty good friends. And it just reminded me, never, ever disbelieve a word Jerry Springer said. I never did again. He was a man of his word and a great guy.
Bloody-o. Thank you so much, mate. I really appreciate it.